Okay, my hopes for today. My largest hope for today is that you will not only hear, for some of you, what you have never heard before. For some of you, you've heard parts of this 3 times before, if you've heard me. But coming out of this will not be a sense of, I learned something, that was good, but exactly what can we in our church do with this? Some of it you may properly or appropriately say, I think we should take that, wad it up, throw it in the trash, never to be seen again. That's your opinion. I've already been paid to say it, so you're not going to hurt my feelings one bit. Others of it you will say, that's something I've heard, I've known it, I've never done anything about it. What am I now going to go do? Some of you, that's a revelation. I need to wrestle with that. I want to talk with my peers about that, etc., and figure out what I'm going to do about it. But the difference in this group and the other seminar events that I have been to is that this group is all about taking action and making change. Yep. And doing that in concert with one another, as I understand it, with the support and the care of one another as you move forward. With one basic thing that I think unites us in all of this, and that is that we shall not and should not stay as we are. So that's sort of my thoughts as we go in. Lots and lots of things here. The first part, we're going to kind of lay a groundwork for you, and then we're going to really get down into the weeds, some more specifics for you to consider taking back and putting into place. So, the competing nature of stewardship. It is important that you and those of your finance teams in your churches understand you are in competition. That has not been a well-received word. It is not a word we like in the church. You know, we don't like to think about beating somebody, etc. I really look at it differently. I'm not in this to beat the Red Cross. I'm in this to compete with the Red Cross because I happen to believe that my particular mission that I am involved in to usher in the kingdom of God is as important as anybody's mission on the face of the earth. And I want to do the best job I can of presenting it, that as others are doing the best job they can, people will be able to make informed decisions as to where their money goes. They are making those kind of decisions, and our donors are looking at us as competing, so we might as well try to do it well. Lyle Schaller, who died a couple weeks ago, some of you saw that, others of you may not have, but we lost Lyle Schaller, gave us this, and this was a very small part of his last book, but it was the part that jumped out enormously to me, and I think it is so true. As he said, there's an unprecedented level of competition now, and for 90% of our congregations, they'll not be able to compete. We're totally unprepared. I really want you, with your facilitators and others later on, to talk about how specifically are you competing? How do you compete for the hearts and minds of your donors versus the competitive things that they are getting and receiving from another dozen or so, each and every one of your donors getting a dozen other requests every year from someone else in very specific ways. How are you competing with that? Because this is what's happened. Chart a lot of you've seen before. Gifts to religion are going down, down, down. 31%, the lowest level it's ever been in history. The statistics will be out to us really within the next 30 days, I think, on where we stand for 2014. Giving USA has announced their new publication's going to be out here shortly. My guess is that gifts to religion are going to not go up. They'll stay at 31 or potentially drop slightly yet some more. May hit the 20s for the very first time as a percent of charitable donations. This from an entity, religion, that used to receive over 60%. And as recently as, there it is, 1994, was at 47%. That's a massive amount of market share that simply says America is shifting and moving its charitable likes elsewhere. Our job is to try to turn that around as we seek to understand these donors and how we can make our best appeal to them. Donations, on the other hand, now are at an all-time record, and yet it has taken us a while to get there. You can see that in 2007, we were equal to 2012. We really had no increase and actually had significant decrease in charitable giving in that time frame. What that has brought attention to, and I can certainly tell you in my conversation with donors is very true, they're far more discriminating now coming out of this than they have ever been with the charitable dollar. The recession made people relook at spending as a whole. A lot of persons looked at their debt for the very first time. A lot of persons, considered just how much or how little a house they now needed to invest in for the first time. Before, there was an assumption, well, let's just buy this house. If it doesn't work out, it'll be worth 10% more next year than it was this past year. And for a while that was true, and it made a lot of people take a new look at how they invest. A lot of folks used to say, my long-term stuff, I'm going to put it all in equities. I'm going to put it all in stocks. That's where it needs to be. 2008, suddenly that portfolio was worth half of what it was before, and folks were wondering, oh my gosh, how do I retire? Everybody re-examined their own personal money and what they're doing with it in all facets of life, charitable giving being one of them. And the thing that occurred with charitable giving was that people still had money to give and money they wanted to give. But they cut back on all the places where it went, and they wanted to get more bang for their buck. With the church, there was a sense in the 90s, the early 2000s, we give the church, and I always give to Mama's church that Mama's in, we were raised in. It's such a wonderful little church, and we always, send them some money and help them out, and It was just kind of a nice, friendly, good to do, gives me a little warm feeling sort of thing. When the recession hit, that thinking was, Mama's church is going to have to stand on its own now. That's not where, I don't see something happening down there. And my church has lost members for the last 3 years, and so I don't think I'm going to give them any extra. And I'm going to pull in, and I'm going to make some other decisions. And I may send my money elsewhere. I don't want any of it to get wasted now. And that's really the change of mindset. It used to be, of course, I give to the church. That was sort of the answer. Of course. And now it is, I give to the church because, if they give. They're not giving out of a sense of history and tradition and obligation. They're giving now because they've been absolutely convinced it's a great place to give, to make a difference. Significant change has occurred. I expect when we get our 2014 numbers, they are going to show what we've seen the last 3 years, which is that every area of charitable giving that is counted showed an increase in gifts, with the exception of religion, which will be the only area that has fallen. As a whole, quote, getting money for your ministry is becoming more and more and more difficult to do. And you're having to do it the hard way. You're having to earn it. Earn their gift versus it just coming by sense of obligation and membership. The number of 501c3s continues to advance. The drop-off that you see is solely because the Internal Revenue Service changed its rules on 501c3s and said in 2011, if you do not file a tax return, we're going to automatically drop you. And there was a lot of 501c3s who were, got created. Nothing really happened there. They were out here. Their name was on a paper, but they hadn't raised any money, hadn't done anything. And they didn't bother to file tax returns, and immediately the government cleaned house. And that's where that big drop was. But of the 501c3s that you're competing against, they are still substantial and they're still extraordinarily strong and are getting ready to show yet again another rise and increase in the number of them that are out there to compete with us. Now, this is what we have seen, and the folks at the Empty Tomb publication put this out every year, showing the total amount of disposable income available and how much of that goes where from Christian church people. 1968, 3% of our money went into the total contributions pot. So 3% of the disposable income of Christians went to church work. 2.3% of it went to congregational finances. That's the running of the church itself. Your debt and your utility bill and light bill and salaries and personnel. In 68, 0.64% went to benevolences. And when they look at Methodist, and this is not just Methodist, this is all the denominations they explored, but they counted apportionments as a benevolence, a mission item, money's going outside the local church. 0.6% went there. So that was the breakdown. Total monies given, quote, money for us, money for others. 2012, that had dropped to total contributions by 27% to 2.2. Monies for us had dropped by 21%, 1.8. And benevolences had dropped and been cut in half, 33%. Someone said to me this morning that their church had wiped out the mission line item to balance their budget this past year. I thank them for the confession. That has happened in church after church after church after church. And in many churches, it has been the wiping out or the choosing not to participate in mission giving so that we can help pay the mortgage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, of taking care of us. Our churches have turned mightily inward in the last 20 years, not outward. It's easy to see how that has changed. Yes, we're giving less to ourselves, but we're giving double the less to others. What do you see here? Tell me what this says to you.
Survival mentality.
Survive at all cost. Is it going to work?
Survive for what?
Survive for what?
The world will see us as irrelevant.
It says that people have more choices to which they will give their finances. And when I came to this church, this particular one, there were 53 designated gifts, from youth ministry pizza parties to children's ministry. So young people want to know and give to what they want to give to, because the greater church, the older population, they trust in the church, give to the church general budget. But it seems like younger people want choices to
Yes.
give. and it scatters the budget, and therefore can't pay the light bill.
Right.
The mortgage, but we have great pizza parties, so there's a designated giving sort of mentality among the younger.
Are they having fundraisers for these all the time? Is there 53 different separate fundraisers?
Well, that,
Or are they just an item in the budget?
there was we just went to a shift, an entire shift in the fall, and how those gifts are done, wiped out a lot of designated gifts. But yes, there were multiple fundraising events.
Yeah.
That were not aligned with the church vision. Everybody was sort of doing their own thing. It was
Yeah.
chaos.
The key point being not in line with the church vision. And this is where it is so easy for the world who looks at us from the outside, who looks on our websites to see who we are, who reads our newsletters, to conclude they are a fundraising machine trying to take money from us for them to do Lord knows what. And they don't know. It's for a youth pizza party. Well, we can have one of those at our house, and what is it all about? It's not centered on the mission. Nothing wrong with a pizza fundraiser if you can tie this directly to your mission and you can show how it affected positively the mission. But you do not do that which doesn't affect mission. Hand, yes, sir.
To what extent do those numbers reflect higher costs of doing business, so to speak, in three ways? Higher expectations about quality of facilities, paying people to do things that 40 years ago volunteers did, and also much higher costs in maintaining staff regarding things like healthcare and so forth. Can you comment on that?
Yes, and all of those are reflected. But I would bring it back. It becomes very, very easy for us, particularly, the higher cost of doing business. Okay. The next question should be, what is our business? What is your business? Want to throw it out? Anybody? Making disciples for Jesus Christ. Okay, that's pretty good. Not bad unity in the group. Okay. If they've got that down, we can end early and go home.
Thanks so much.
So, yes, we need to make disciples. So, how's the best way to do it? We need to hire more people. Okay, let's look at that. If you're going to do that, then let's measure it. Okay, we're getting ready to make an investment of blank in a person or persons. What's the discipleship return gotten for that? We need to do such and such with facilities. What if we chose, see, this is the discussion that we need to be having. What if we chose not to put $500,000 into tuck pointing the brick? What's our alternatives to making disciples? Maybe tuck pointing the brick for $500,000 is a good thing to do to make disciples. Let's open it and discuss it like that. That's the discussion we don't have enough. The discussion is, well, we need to tuck point the brick. It's going to deteriorate the building if we don't. Well, this building has housed us from when we had 800 in worship. Now we have 250. We're not making disciples for Jesus. Are we to be here for something else? That's the way it needs, to go. I have no problem with the premise that what you just described is exactly what's going on. It's just going on for the wrong reason.
Question about clergy tithing. This is a discussion.
How did you get there?
I'm just
Did you come with an agenda?
no.
Okay, go ahead.
Just a question.
Okay.
And we're talking about the general fund and congregational finances, and my wife and I have a discussion all the time. When we give our tithe, she doesn't feel that it's appropriate to just give it to the general fund, because to her it feels like the money comes back to us in my paycheck. So she's always been somebody that designates where it goes, and she picks a specific area of the church budget to support. I say that's not helpful, because she's training other people, because she's sharing it with the ladies in her groups that she directs her giving. What do you think of that? And I'm not gonna go home and tell my wife Cliff Christian.
Oh, you are too. It's exactly what you're going to do. You know, when it gets down to marriages, when a pastor is having some disagreement with a spouse, this is frequently an area where we defer to the foundation.
Good answer.
Well played.
I wish you hadn't made it so personal. If you could have just said, "I have a
I know
friend."
a guy.
I know. There you go.
I appreciate her, I appreciate the thinking that went into that, but I just don't know that it's helpful.
Okay, are you sharing your tithe with the congregation?
Yes,
Okay. And,
I'm sharing that I tithe, I just,
well, you need to improve on that. Oh, man.
did I sidetrack your presentation?
Yeah, you sort of did.
We can come back to it.
All right, for the good of the kingdom. I want to look at this as a kingdom thing. What's the best way I can witness for the good of the kingdom as one who is viewed as a kingdom leader?
Okay,
Your tithe, 10% of your income in your family, should go towards the budget of the church. There should then be a series of offerings that you and your wife feel strongly about that you do over and above that.
okay.
I think that's the strongest witness to make because it is a clear to understand witness when shared. If you shared, my wife and I are going to tithe, and I make, and I'm going to pick it out of the sky, not to embarrass you, but you did tell me you're in a significant church, so you're making $100,000 a year.
Really?
Isn't that what you? I mean, that's kind of.
Arkansas.
Oh, you know, I forgot. Okay, I forgot. You're the poor people from Pennsylvania and Delaware and all that. The $100,000 salaries. Oh, there's a lot of them.
It's not here.
Okay.
Washington.
Come on down south, sister. Come down south. Okay. So you make $50,000. I think you need to say to your church, this thing, am I getting feedback to you or is it just to me where I am up here? Okay. So we can turn this down a little bit. $50,000 is what this church pays me. And my tithe to this church will be a minimum of $5,000 coming back to you. Now, we hope we can support other endeavors of the church, doing this or this or this, et cetera, et cetera. But this is my witness of what we want to do. Now, you're real happy, aren't you? Because that's what you wanted to hear. And now you can go home and tell your wife you're right.
I'm not dumb enough to do that.
That's good. Good. All right. I mentioned yesterday the most generous states. I brought you the top 10 that you could see who those are. Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina. Idaho is obviously not a southern state, but Idaho is a heavily Mormon state. Oklahoma, Arkansas, and North Carolina.
Maybe why you have $100,000 salary sounds.
We're generous. We also have some churches that are bigger. The least generous states, New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, North Dakota, they just wish they were in the Northeast, I guess. Wisconsin, and Hawaii, where all the rest of you wish you were. So, yes, ma'am?
Can you explain to me what is I don't want to read a point that you might not be making.
You may not want to read a point I am making.
Well, let's hope not.
Okay.
because I don't have words. The most generous states, is there a reason why you have to put down one voted for Romney, one voted for Obama? I mean, what's the
It was in the report, and it was something, I just thought, as I told you yesterday, I really don't know what it means, but I found it really fascinating.
I find it fascinating too.
That, I would have guessed that states who would identify themselves and who would vote in what we would consider the liberal way, which is we're more concerned for society and giving people who don't have money, et cetera, versus the conservative thing, every person for themselves, good luck to you. That's the best way to get there, kind of the Reaganomics, et cetera, that we would see that the people who, quote, seem to talk about the most care and concern for the least would be the ones who personally are giving the most in that direction. I would just assume it. That's not the way it came out. And I don't have any answers for that. I just thought it was very interesting to see. That's all.
And this is not church contributions.
No, this is generosity as a whole. Yeah.
If you remove the big southern football, big southern universities from that giving, there's a lot of more.
You be giving to the universities for football?
In general, yeah.
Like Penn State?
They're a lot more prevalent down south.
Well, we do play a better brand of football. You started this.
One point so the whole group can hear. If you have a question, I'll try to run a microphone to you as quickly as possible, or if Cliff can repeat
Oh,
the
okay.
question.
Oh, yeah, because it's not getting taped.
We're trying to make
Okay.
sure that we've got the learning that'll live.
I got you. All right.
Just, if you give me a high sign, I'll run a microphone. If it's going to be a long question, if it's about football, we'll just sort of skip it and get the edits down anyway.
Okay. I don't know. I'm good to talk about football if y'all want to. The most your most generous communities, Salt Lake City, which doesn't have much of a football team, and then Memphis and Birmingham. That frankly, if you've ever been to Memphis and Birmingham, those are some of the poorest looking cities that you've ever been to. Atlanta, Nashville, Jacksonville, Oklahoma City, Dallas. All of those are southern cities, with the exception of Salt Lake, and then the least northeast communities, California, et cetera. And yet, my son lives in San Francisco. I see there near the bottom of the least generous. There is a double wide trailer about 3 houses down from where he lives. A double wide trailer. We're talking like hook it up on wheels and drive it off. And it's for sale for $575,000.
Just the trailer, not the property, not the land?
I think you get the piece of property it's on, I assume. I mean, it doesn't have the wheels anymore. It's kind of anchored there. So, but you're buying a trailer for $500,000. And that's what it costs to live out there. And I believe the trailer, it's 1,300 square feet a house. So you can do the math. Outrageous cost of living, absolutely outrageous what they pay for things there, but they're not generous, hardly at all. Now, this one that many of you have seen me talk about before, which breaks down giving amongst denominations and where we are, and brings me to one of the points that we'll spend some time, hopefully today, talking about. The Mormons, by far the strongest givers in America. followed by the non-denominational groups, followed by the Pentecostals and the Assemblies of God. And the Methodists are way down near the bottom of the pack at 1%, clustered in a mix of all these main lines of Episcopals, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Methodists. They're all clustered in that 1.1 to 1 sort of section. Now, I have raised the issue and others, and so folks surely now know what I believe one of the key reasons is as to why the Assemblies of God and Mormons are so much higher than we are. And what was that? Expectations.
Or guilt. Really crappy theology.
Yeah, but
It's really true.
but they're two very different crappy theologies.
Yes, but
The Assemblies and the Mormons have almost nothing related theologically. So you can't say, well, it's their theology that makes them give better. It's very different theologies.
Cliff?
Yes.
I came to Christ in an Assemblies of God church.
Yes.
In Richmond, Virginia. And I distinctly remember at the age of 17, the pastor preaching on tithing. And we had what we called faith promise giving. And you went forward with a card, and by faith, you made a commitment, trusting God, that your cell phone wouldn't go off. Trusting God as to what you were going to give.
Uh-huh.
And then you wrote down what you believed God was calling you to give, and the base was tithing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you took that up and you put it at the altar.
Yeah.
And you got a letter with an envelope in it for your faith promise given. And that was what, I never thought anything of it. I just thought that's how you,
It's just how we are.
and that's how you give your life to Christ.
Yep.
That was just a piece of how you give your life to Christ.
Yes. There's very much, you spend time with folks in the assemblies, and thank you very much for that. You hear this, what you said so beautifully. I never thought much of it. It's just sort of who we are. It's who, that's just who we were. There are things that you just don't think about that have become who you are as a person and in a particular society, etc. The problem is that we have removed financial stewardship from that which is who we are. It's an add-on. It is something private, hushed, kept aside. It's to be dreaded. Every year you're to be reminded that once again you need to do this, like your dental checkup. And because, it's not who you are. We all laugh about our silly quirks, and we have them. My wife's has several that are all precious, but
This is being recorded.
yeah, I know. But one is that she will not lay down for the night anywhere, anytime, without one sitting in water. She'll find a way to go sit in water. She has to do that. It's who she is. She doesn't think about it. She will find a pot and sit in it if that's all she has, I think. But, okay, she's got to go sit in water. And it's just who she is, it's who she is. And we all have these things. Giving in Pentecostal churches, giving in the Mormon church, giving in many Southern Baptist churches and others, it's who they are. And they were taught it from their homes when they were small. Here's your first allowance. You take a tithe of that, and et cetera, et cetera. They were taught it in Sunday school. They were taught it as they came up. They heard it frequently in worship, and it became a part of who you are. It became a part of who you are. That's what we have lost, I am absolutely convinced, in the United Methodist Church. Not only that sense of financial stewardship, but the whole arena of discipleship. We have lost it as to being who we are. John Wesley rebelled against the idea of just being religious. You go to worship in the Church of England, you wear your finest clothes, and you do the religion thing on Sunday morning, and you check the box. And so he started this methodical faith and changed kind of the rules. We have returned to the Church of England. And that's been the big era. How many of you had or are having the Credo course in your churches for confirmation? Have you explored what it says about financial stewardship under how you give gifts in the section on there on prayers, presence, gift, service on that vow? Have you looked at what it says about money? What does it say? Say it out loud. Nothing. Zippo. Nada.
But I put it in.
Good for you. Zero. We are preparing people to be disciples of Jesus Christ. Isn't that what it means to when you join the church? And we are saying nothing about financial stewardship. Now, when I saw that, I wrote the author. Or I sent him an email. And I said, I'm just asking for an explanation. How did you interpret that the vow of giving gifts did not include any material possession? I'm sure I'll get an answer at some point, but I haven't yet. But sometimes it takes a couple of months to reply to an email. No reply. I doubt I'll get it. But it was the feature of my newsletter article that went out to several thousand churches. And I got a call from Bill Easom, who some of you are familiar with Bill, and one of the top consultants in the country, and he said, "You didn't mention the name of the program in your article. Tell me what it is so that I can tell everybody not to use it." So anyway, vengeance is mine. But and it's sad. It really is sad. But I think it highlighted for me what so much of our problem is. We are bringing people into the church without any sense that this is a part of what it means to be a disciple. And we're allowing them, frankly, to have two masters. And we're blessing two masters. And it doesn't work. They don't do that. Now, they do it under some bad theology. I think our theology is the greatest on the planet. I don't want to be anything but a Methodist. I am a Methodist, always have been a Methodist. I will die a Methodist. However many times we're getting ready to split, I'm going to pick one that's got Methodist in it, and that's where I'm going to go. But we have carried what it now means to be a Methodist badly to the world. And that has got to change. And to me, this is one of the biggest changes you can make, and I hope it's one of the largest discussions that you can have. How do we reverse in our church decades of allowing people in on the cheap instead of helping them to understand the costly? What it is to be a disciple. Jesus said, if you're not ready to pick up the cross. Now, we're not asking people to take on nails. We're just asking them not to love their money so much. And yet we don't want to go there. And most churches, and again, I get into these discussions, and when we have them, they are so afraid of the loss of members, of offending somebody, that people will leave. We've got to be nice. They also don't want to go there themselves. And therefore, they block an attempt to truly make the church a house of disciples for Christ. How do we begin to move that forward in our places, that we can truly be an army of disciples instead of a fellowship gathering of members? So that needs to be in your discussion tables going around. You know, frequently I'm asked when I teach in church plant groups, and I teach a lot to new church planters and in their training events and stuff. If I was starting a church today, and I never did plant a church from scratch. I took on 3 that were significantly failing, but I never planted them from scratch. You know, what is the most important thing I would try to do in day one? And the most important thing is I would begin with a high expectation of what it is to be a part of that church. And people would not only take spiritual vows, but those vows would be written with explanations and covenants unto God as to what it really meant to be praying and presence and gifts and service, etc. So that's the big difference I see in the Methodists, the Lutherans, Presbyterians, Episcopals, and the others. And I think it is what the world sees. What makes you different? What makes you unique? You know, this is just no big deal. It just freaks me out. I actually heard a pastor say this. I was in a contemporary service about a month ago, and he was going to receive a new member in the middle of the service, not at the end, but in the middle. They had a special program. They wanted to kind of have its own closing. And so he just announced, today we have someone coming to join our church. You know, Bill Smith, want to invite you to come up front if you would. And he said, you know, this is Bill, and he does such and such, and he's been coming for a few weeks, and he now wants to join our church. And Bill, everyone that joins the church answers to this one question, and it is not difficult. Now, he didn't say it like I just said it to you, but he just said, as a matter of this one question, and it's not difficult. Will you be loyal? Da, 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 da. And Bill, you know, looked at him and said, you know, yeah, I know. And that was it. There was Bill. And all the rest of us heard, this isn't difficult. This isn't meant to be a big deal. Right. It's easy to pray for the church. It's easy to serve out in society. It's easy to be in worship. It's easy to give. It's easy to witness. It's not. And a lot of us preach that from time to time to people who have already joined the organization, having you say to them, it's not a big deal. And then they get a little upset the second Sunday of October when you're saying to them, now your giving's a big deal. And they don't interpret that in the scheme of discipleship. They interpret it in the means the preacher's short on money. And he or she wants to get it from us. Because it wasn't ever laid out as a part of what discipleship's about in the very beginning. That's why we missed it. We've got to change that process. Did we send copies, Gene, of the Ginghamsburg model of what Ginghamsburg Church does? Did you get copies of that?
No.
Oh.
I do. I'll send them out.
Okay, well, or I can at break, I can have my office maybe send that to us by email. We got a printer here?
I can print them.
Okay, all right. I want to get in your hands a sheet that shows what they're doing at Ginghamsburg. Y'all are familiar with Ginghamsburg Church, Mike Slaughter, etc. 12 weeks of classes there. 12 weeks before you can join Ginghamsburg. Mike really believes in radical discipleship. Now, he has over 5,000 on Sunday morning. He has 1,600 members. But Mike wouldn't call them members. He would call them disciples. You know, that's what they're looking for. They don't not love people. They don't not care for people. They don't have a show your ID card before you can come and worship or anything else. But if you're going to be a disciple of Jesus, you're going to understand all of what it's about, and you're going to covenant to follow. And I think that's about as biblical and as close to Christ as you can get. And, you know, I will hear comments like, well, that sounds all great. Well, you don't have to do 12 weeks. You could just do 3. Well, yeah, but there's a lot of people will not commit in this day and age to come to 3 classes. And, and yet you're going to let them take a vow that they're willing to pick up a cross and make Jesus first in their life, but they can't make it to 3 classes? The answer's no. Yes, ma'am.
And on the flip side of that,
Or sir, excuse me.
on the flip side, Adam Hamilton does it one afternoon. His new members is essentially after church, come down to the fellowship hall. I'll talk about what being a member is, and they join the church.
And Adam and I don't agree on that. Now, that discussion is not a we want all of you here. They lay it out pretty strongly that these are the responsibilities of membership, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that can happen at resurrection. You're right. You're right.
Cliff, so say a word about those churches who have been around for 150, 200 years.
Yes.
That we're coming into who have a significant membership, not 20, 30,
Yeah,
50.
right. That have grandfathered in under lower expectations. Yeah. Yeah.
You're a grandfather, so you can talk about it.
I am. And I know a lot better how to raise those kids than their parents do, by golly. Those churches are not going to change because you say so.
Really?
Really. They will, however, grow in their understanding that making disciples is what it is all about. And they will grow in their understanding that those coming into the church from here on need a better training venue for what that is. And will allow you and or others in the church to establish training classes for those joining in 2016 and beyond. Once that is established, and frankly, a part of it will be in a very selfish motive. Yes, preacher, we do want you to teach them about stewardship because we're tired of paying the bills ourselves and these new members not picking up their load. They want the bills paid. They don't want to make disciples. They want the bills paid. You're probably not going to reverse that right off. But you just say, well, thank you for the support. However you get it, you're going to get it. As you start those classes of high expectation, your new people will enter into the church with a different mindset than the old ones. And slowly but surely, that DNA will begin to be infused. You will also have some of your very good older members, in seeing and experiencing some of this, begin to say, you know, could some of us who've been here for a while attend one of those classes, hear what you're doing? Obviously, absolutely. And you go that way. Again, it all begins with the focus in everything you do being what is our ultimate mission and how do we get there? And it is not hard to say, look, we've been just bringing in folks by, yeah, I want to join. Great, let's do it next Sunday. Or come to this little class and we'll make sure you have a diagram of the building and a copy of the officers and da-da-da-da-da. And let me tell you what we see. The majority of our new people, over half of them are gone after 1 year. They join and then a year from now they have disappeared. We get very little financial contribution from them at all. Only a handful get into Sunday school. You know, we have been failing at this. Your old people are going to hear numbers. I want to get the numbers up in church, and I want to get the money up. You want to make disciples. and you just need permission to go do it. But you can certainly argue with them that, we've been trying it this old way, and just show them the record. That's what you have to do. It takes a while. It takes a commitment of some time. And quite frankly, folks, and I'll tell you, this is one of the downfalls of our system. It's one of the reasons why within Methodist churches, we see things like planned giving done poorly, etc. Stuff that takes years to develop. What is likely to happen over a period of years to some of you? You're moving. Now, you would like to think of yourself and, well, sure, but I do the very best thing for this church right while I'm here until I'm actually gone. But the mere fact that in 3, 4, 5 years I'm probably gone, and they know in 3, 4, 5 years you're probably gone, will affect long-term strategies like what we're talking about to take effect. It would be very logical to sit around and think, boy, it's going to be tough getting these new classes started, requiring people to come up here 6 straight weeks. I know membership's going to drop. We took in 30 last year. There'll be a good third of those just decide not to join this year if we have the requirements. That won't look good on paper. I've been here for 2 years. I'm probably going to be looked at next year, and they're going to see that I lost members. And the new preacher may not want to do this anyway. So it doesn't happen. When you have a sense of I'm here for a dozen years or maybe forever, it doesn't scare you to say, I'm going to make a change that's going to cause a loss here, because I believe there'll be a greater gain down the road. That's an area where the itineracy and just the very knowledge of it hurts us both. Hurts us both. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So for me, therein lies the problem, because I may be able or willing to embrace the systems that we're talking about today, but like you said, I have the knowledge, they have the knowledge, you're only going to be here for a while, and then you're gone. So why are we here?
Yeah. Well, his question, he's following up the question there on what I was talking about with, if I'm going to be gone, they're going to be gone, etc. And he said, why are we here? The why are we here is always the same. We're always here trying to make disciples of Jesus. You're trying to do it in a certain way that you don't know if your predecessor is going to maintain or not. And I really don't have a great answer for that, except to say that somehow, I would hope that all of us in whatever arena we find ourselves in would give every single day the very best we've got to Christ. And sometimes that means that we're planting trees we're not going to sit in the shade of. But somebody has to plant that tree. And, I've gone to churches where really good trees were planted before me, and man, it really helped my ministry. And I've gone to churches to where they chopped down all the trees, and I had to start over. But you take what you have, and you make the best of it every day until it's not yours to do, and then you go to the next place.
I understand, and just as we were talking about the churches or congregations that have been grandfathered in under the lower expectations, we come and we try to raise those expectations, try to help them or redirect to the greater expectation. But in the meantime, there's a bunch of noise, and there's a bunch of letters, and there's a bunch of, people leave, and money goes down, and then we're seen as an ineffective pastor.
Yes.
So it's time for a new appointment.
Yes. And I think this, again, we're looking, and I'm talking about what I know is hard, and you just defined it beautifully with, hey, as he said, hey, I try to do this, get a bunch of noise, get a bunch of letters, I leave, the anti's won, so what do we do? Do you have the answer to that?
I'm Ted Brown. I'm a member of LADE. And you're here because one of your roles is to develop in your LADE leadership that believe that their role is to win people as disciples of Christ. So you're here to plant those seeds so that people, so the next pastor behind you is led by the lady at the church in the same direction. So that would be my answer.
And, and you are right. I think what he is saying is, will I even get a chance to do that? The uproar starts. We've all seen it, et cetera, et cetera. And this gets back to where we talked about in our system. That hopefully within our system, if communication is good with those who, quote, control our career, our superintendents and our bishops, that we go to them in a very clear way. This is what I'm attempting to do. And here's one of the outcomes. I think you're going to hear about it, et cetera. I want you to know up front. I want to stay in total dialogue with you. I am not trying to burn this church down. But I am trying to weed out some chaff. I don't see that this church has been a top performer for years, and I'm getting ready to mess up. And I'm moving in some radical discipleship ways. I don't want to do stuff that surprises you, Mr. and Miss Superintendent. Let's talk, because they're your biggest ally in this if they'll stand with you. And then I think instead of just getting up on a Sunday and saying, folks, there's the new 10 commandments. And here they are. But you begin that, and perhaps it's with one of my books or some other guide, with 6 or 7 of your core leaders that you think love Jesus. And that's the first criteria. Do they really love Jesus? Not love you. Do they really love Jesus? And they're going to look at everything through the eyes of the cross the best they can. And you work with them. And they say, preacher, this is the direction we're going to go in. And we're with you. Okay? Let's have a little larger circle. Eventually it gets to all the powers that be. But you simply start, and you start it with humility. Here's what's on my heart. Here's where I'm wrestling to, that I think God's calling me to lead the church. But I think God talks to laity too. And frankly, you're here in my living room because I'm thinking maybe God's talked with you. And so I want you to be praying about this and about this and about this and praying for me. And collectively, I want us over the next 6-8 weeks to have several conversations. And that's how you attempt to move it forward. And if you can't get your DS and bishop to say I'm with you, if you can't get a core of 6 or 8, then I think you have to back off unless you believe today is the day of martyrdom. I think you back it off and you say, I will just bash my head against the wall here. So I'm going to look after the sick and I'm going to care for them, and I'm going to let the powers that be know this is probably not a good place in ministry for me, and I'm going to dust my feet off and I'm going to go down the road and try down there. Because we see that again in Scripture. You give it your best. If they're not going to listen to you, you don't spend all day. Dust them off and you go on the next one. Does that help at all?
Absolutely.
Bless you, brother. Yes, sir?
As you're trying to change the culture of expectations of membership
Yes.
in an existing congregation that does not have that culture,
Yes.
what are your thoughts about simultaneously trying to raise the bar for new members, but at the same time raising the bar for leadership? If you're going to be a leader in this congregation, you must sign on to these expectations.
We're going to talk about that coming up some more, but both have got to happen. It's going to be easier for you to change the bar on new members than to change the bar for leadership, because you're asking people to vote against their own self-interest now. You got people on finance who shouldn't ought to be there. But they are there because they always have been. We don't do anything without checking with Aunt Sally first. We always put her on this, And so it's going to take a little more to get there. I think it's a part of a larger strategy, but it's part B, not part A. Okay. All right, I'm going to finish with this and then give you a significant break here to bathroom, coffee, and conversation. The question that we wrestle with as we compete is not to say to folks, why give? The question now really needs to be, why do they need to give to you? And that's what I want you to wrestle with. What makes you worth giving to? How many of you have got some really good nonprofit agency opportunities in your community, doing very good stuff? Everybody. Stuff you like, right? Name one.
Operation Warrior Refuge.
All right, Warrior Refuge. Ooh, that's a good. Was that a wounded warrior kind of thing? Good, that's a good one. Somebody else, name one.
Hospice, United Way.
Hospice, United Way, Red Cross. What? McDaniel College is a good one.
Backpacks of Hope.
Backpacks, oh, these backpacks for kids in school to take home on the weekends with food and stuff? Oh, those are great, yes.
Helping Up Mission.
What?
Helping Up Mission.
Helping Up Mission, what do they do?
Drug and alcohol for men.
Drug and alcohol, okay.
Recovery. Rescue Mission.
Rescue Mission, homeless, etc. Anybody here hear something that wasn't very good? These are all really good, and I would expect some of you give some money in some of those directions, and I would hope so. Some of those touch my heart. If you ever, I think, God, did y'all see that thing on television of the little kids that wrote, what I wish my teacher knew?
Yes.
Oh God. Some of these kids writing, I wish my teacher knew that, I haven't seen my daddy in 3 years. I wish my teacher knew that mama's not home and that's why I don't get my paper signed. I wish the teacher knew I have nobody to play with. I wish my teacher knew I was hungry. Oh, and here the backpack thing, let's we're going to feed them for the weekend anyway. Anyway, stuff breaks your heart. You want to give to it. That's what your members are hearing too. And let me tell you, they want to give. Most of your folks want to give. They're now really trying to decide if you need to be in the mix or not. And you're just saying, well, we're your church, you should, won't work anymore. You're going to have to compete against stuff that can really put some changed lives in front of them. Soldier who gets up, says, I went to serve my country and this happened to me. And I was thinking of suicide and I couldn't fit in society. And, I knew I had a wife and 3 little children, but I just couldn't think about being with them anymore, And I found this project. And now I've got new life and I got new hope and I'm working here, there, et cetera, and my family's happy. Yeah. Good. You want to do that. How can you put lives in front of people that help them want to give to you? These are the 3 reasons, and I'm not going to talk about them so much, but folks, it's the core of how you got to shape your stewardship. So you've heard me talk about it a dozen times, and you've read it in my books over and over and over again. This is a center core of how you need to do stewardship. The number one reason that makes people give is where they see lives being changed. They believe in your mission. They believe what you do is valuable. And let me repeat, if what you do and all you have to say is being done better elsewhere, then why should they give it to you? Do you hear me? I mean, we've got churches that say, we're a great church. Why are you a great church? Well, we open our doors and these wounded warriors have a gathering here on Tuesday nights. And that's great. What does that do? Well, we provide this place. Well, that's great. And they're saying, we've taken a dozen of these people and changed their life. Why do I want to give the money to you? I'll just give it to the wounded warrior that are meeting in classroom 4. The rescue mission. You say, we're supportive of the homeless, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How do you do that? Are you better at doing it than the rescue mission is at doing it? No, the rescue mission does that better than you do. Well, we're open to the LGBT community and all that. Are you better than the LBTG groups that are there that are actively working and politicking and lobbying and doing it? No. If I've really got a heart for that, that's where my money's going. Well, we sent so much to Imagine No Malaria. A wonderful program. Great program. I'm not anti-Imagine No Malaria. I'm not. But if that's what you're talking about, I think some of you heard me probably say, You know, several years ago when we were getting into this initially, it was nothing but nets, and it became the Imaginal area. Well, my son worked for Marathon Oil Company in Equatorial Guinea, Africa. And his job was to connect the local population with work from Marathon Oil, and which I thought was a good thing. He employed about 1,000 Equatorial Guineans to work. That's a pretty good thing. Well, I was telling him, I said, you know, son, I think it's just great. And I said, do you know, the United Methodist Church last year got $10 million, and we sent it over for nets. And you know what these nets going to do, son? And they're going to, you know, we give them out, and they keep mosquitoes from biting, and it prevents malaria. And, you know, we get $10 million in doing that and stuff. And he's looked at me and he said, Dad, we know all about the mosquito nets. I said, oh. He said, Marathon gave $25 million for that last month. I said, oh. The oil company trumped us by 2.5 times. Now, that doesn't make what we're doing bad, but there are folks doing that better than we are. What do we stand on? What do we tell people? This is our mission, and this is how we do it well. Making disciples for Jesus Christ. That's what they don't do. That's our uniqueness to offer. And because of Jesus Christ, we are doing a large number of other things. They'll trump you with everything but Jesus. The second is involving the pastor and staff. People want relationships where their money's going, particularly major donors. They want the connection. They want the relationship. When we looked at statistics, what's the number? What are the reasons why you quit giving? They talked to major donors. Why did you quit giving to this place? The number one reason why they quit giving to that place? They lost the personal connection. And yet, we downplay that a personal connection is important. For this, it's important for shut-ins. It's important for the critically ill. Is it important for those who have been blessed with financial resources to also have a personal relationship as to how they deal with that burden in their life? The answer to that is yes, a capital yes. We don't do it well. And then fiscal responsibility. They want to hear we're solid, we've taken money and we have applied it to where they wanted it to go, and we did good things with it. But when we stand up in front of them week after week after week and we talk about how much trouble we're in. I read a letter the other day from a bishop written to 3,000 members of the annual conference to appeal that they give money to a conference camp. And the letter began, our conference camp is about to close.
Wow.
They have no money left, and they've got, I forgot what the number was of bills owed presently. This is not sustainable without your contribution. You know, please send it. And it was a little longer than all that, but that's the way it started. We are a disaster and we're going under. Please throw your money in the rat hole. You know how much money 3,000 people contributed to that letter? $25,000. $25,000. Impact is a huge word. What is the impact your church is having that makes you worthy of money? If you will but give us money, this is the impact we'll have. This is the impact that will not occur if we don't have it. If our church died tomorrow, this is the hole that'll be left in the community. If our church doubled in size, this is the power of change that could create. What is your impact? It's a huge word, particularly with Gen Xers. Okay. All right. Oh, you have the Ginghamsburg? Oh, thank you so much. Could be a point of discussion, some of you, that if you want, but this is their requirement. This is a church, Tip City, Ohio, which is not a burgeoning city by any means. It's outside of Dayton, which is really a very poor community. They've lost massive amounts of manufacturing there, but that has continued to thrive. It's a church with a little over 5,000 every Sunday, only 1,600 of whom are members. And their giving on average is 6 times that of the average United Methodist as a church. This is sort of what's required of those who are seeking membership. Okay, I'm going to give you a break here, and facilitators, you've got your questions, you've heard the discussion here in sheets. It is 10:15, and I would suggest that we be back here. Let me give you 35 minutes. How about 10 minutes until 11 o'clock? Okay?